my worry about being up here is that I'm going to fall down this stage. So, or as Stuart and I were talking about, we used to call it a platform. And there was a baptistry underneath there, so there was always a fear that you would fall through it as well. So yeah, looking at really our focus today, just to let you know, our focus today that I'm going to be looking at is mental health, but having things like anxiety, stress, worry, fear, and maybe looking at things like low self-esteem and confidence and so on. So that will be kind of the focus in there, just to let you know about that. So I did a little bit of research to find out if I could find something, what was the biggest stress that people have in life. So Legal in General recently conducted a survey with UK adults and asked them what the biggest stress that they had throughout their life, what was like a life event. The top result, with 57% of people that answered, was moving house. We've moved house, okay? And I'm sure if you ask the team, if you ask Andy and Heather, they'd be saying, yeah, absolutely. I asked Ruth how she felt about it, and she said, fine, because that's her default, is saying fine. I'm not going to ask Stuart, he's a lead pastor, he doesn't know what stress is. So we're going to be looking at these areas. So Stuart said, I love this, I have some mantras at school. One of my mantras is, I don't do drama. Right? And it's not that I don't teach, I don't teach drama, but I don't do drama. Right? Let's calm it down. Let's not get all involved in things. Let's get some facts and figures out here to talk about what's happened. Don't do drama. And the other mantra is, I'm not a. It'll be something like, I'm not a geography teacher, I cannot help you with that. That's real, way out of my comfort zone. But quite often I say, I'm not a mental health practitioner. I'm not trained, I've had some training. I do have a level 2 certificate in mental health in young people and children, but that doesn't really, it's just information. It's not a practitioner. So I signpost an awful lot. So I'm not standing here as a mental health practitioner, but I'm here as someone who deals with young people on a daily basis with their mental health. And the number one thing that's stress, anxiety, and depression. These are the things that are the biggest issues within young people today. And I think if we cross that along the age groups, it wouldn't be much different. For me, I have my own experience in mental health. So I didn't actually realize this, but 40 years ago, today, I had my second panic attack. It's not like a celebration, but and I was in my final year at school. I know, 40 years ago, you can't believe it. I was in my final year at school. It was just a few days before that I had my first panic attack. And thankfully, I don't really have them. I know what the triggers are, and I'm able to deal with that and cope with that. But it was anxiety, and one of those triggers was actually moving. I moved from my family home in Dumfries up to West Lothian. I knew nobody, not a single person. Well, that's not quite true. We actually found people in the church that we knew. If you grew up in the Brethren, you would know them. In fact, one of the people that was associated with them is Audrey. I knew Audrey over 40 years ago. I'm sure it's just a couple of years ago. But that was brilliant, but school was really, really difficult. And just as I settled into 6 year was actually a really good year for me. There was a smaller group of people, I got on with people, I seemed to start to fit in with the group. And then, at this time of year, what was the focus? It's leaving. It's another change that was coming up. And that is what triggered me. And so I know that anxiety is there, or stress, or fear, or worry that's there. But now I've got ways of dealing with that. I do have breathing techniques that I didn't get taught these. These are strange things. Because 40 years ago, mental health conditions weren't really treated in the same way. So I do have breathing techniques that help me. I've discovered this thing called brown noise, which is just like water going over pebbles or like a beach. It's brilliant. It shuts people out as well, which is so good. So the kind of things that I have is knock-on effects from the anxieties, things like low self-esteem, low self-confidence, overwhelming. I love that. I feel overwhelmed a lot of the time. And I overthink so much. And my desire is actually to help young people through this, to give them sort of tools and techniques to be able to help them with that. There's a group that, it's called See Me Scotland, but they've got this new project called See Me, See Change. And this is what they say. So they said, we spoke to young people across Scotland to find out more about their mental health and the stigma they face. We all want this to improve. By working together, we can create school environments where young people feel safe, supported, and able to talk about how they're feeling, free from stigma and discrimination. And that's what we want to roll out. We want to get rid of that. There's some facts that they have on this, which I'm going to put up, which is the little main figures on here, these ones. So 39% of young people think that teachers take them seriously when they try to talk about mental health. It's not enough. Not enough people. And the next slide, 51% of young people wouldn't tell anyone if they were finding it difficult to cope with their mental health. And again, I don't think that's unusual for young people or adults, because we're frightened about speaking about it because it makes us feel different. So we want to try and change these figures. It's not that we want everybody to come and go, oh, like my mental health is this and your mental health is that. And it's actually about saying that it's okay to talk about it if people want to. So, what about some of these myths? So, the first one, these verses that we read. So, the next slide, please. So, God commands us not to worry, fear, or be anxious. So, I want to remove that myth. So, these verses that we read, they are brilliant verses, right? It's good things for us to know. We cannot add a single hour to our life by worrying. Absolutely true. There's nothing wrong with that. Seek God above all else. Absolutely true. That's what we should be doing. But it's not true that God is telling us or commanding us not to worry. It doesn't say that. Because right at the end of it, it says, today's trouble is enough for today. God knows that we're going to worry about things. God knows that we're going to be anxious. It's not that he wants that for us. He doesn't. He doesn't want us to be like that. He wants us to be free from that. But this is about saying that, no, everything is not going to be okay, but God has got things in hand. One of the things that if you do things like mindfulness courses, one of the things that they tell you to do is get out into nature. Go and study God's creation, although they might not use those words. But that's what these verses are telling us. Go out into God's creation. See how he tends after the grass and the birds and the flowers. God is there looking after them. How much more important are you? You're far more important. But God knows that things are difficult and he will be with us. He is bigger than our problems. He is bigger than our fears and our worries. But also have to look at, Alan mentioned this last week, that in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus had anxiety. He had anguish about what he was going to be doing. There would be a fear there about that, the next step in his road for salvation. And he said, if this can be taken away from me, do it. But he did. He went on and he gave that sacrifice for us. So he's not telling us, don't worry. He's telling us, don't worry. I've got things. I've got things in hand. You might not know what the answer is going to be. You might not know what the solution is, but I have that. There is a hope there from God. The next one, now this is one that so I'm going back 40 years, so this is kind of a trigger for me. In some ways, this saying is a bit like fingernails on a chalkboard. It's not wrong in its sense. It's just there's some things in it that does make me go, oh no, it's not quite true. My panic attacks that I was having were saying, I can't cope. I'm not able to cope. Whatever was happening with me that I didn't understand, I didn't have the coping mechanisms for that. This saying made me feel a little as if I was less than, that I wasn't worthy enough, that I wasn't good enough, that my faith wasn't strong enough because I wasn't coping. And that's not good to tell somebody who's struggling with anxiety that because you can't cope, oh, there's something wrong with me. And that's it, the overthinking just starts. Well, continues. But also, it's the first phrase, God won't give me anything that I can't cope with. God doesn't give you negative things. God gives you good things. He turns bad things into good. We're told that. So I bought into the lie that I had been given this illness because I had done something wrong. There was something that God had given me this, so I must have done something wrong. It actually took me quite a number of years to read the book of Job because I felt that that's what that was like. Not that the things that happened to Job were anything like what had happened to me, but I found it really difficult to read that book. But then when I looked into it more, I realized it wasn't God that gave him this. God allowed it to happen. He took his hands off, and he was allowed Satan was allowed to go in and test Job. Job didn't receive that from God. He received forgiveness, and he received more than he ever had before from God. He turned that bad thing into good. If you go back to the beginning, when we sinned, when the first sin happened in the world, the first emotion that we hear about Adam and Eve was fear. It wasn't that they went, oh, we know all these good things. It wasn't. It was fear because they knew they had done something wrong. So I'm not saying that this, like illness doesn't happen because of sin. It does because it came into the world so long ago. But it doesn't mean that your sin has given you that. And that is not just about mental health. That's about our physical health as well. The great thing about this is part of our humanness. Okay, this is what happens sometimes when you're in bad situations. Things don't go well. It's a product of our humanity. For me, I thought I need to be forgiven for something. But the origins of my mental health, apart from the moving house, was also things like sort of bullying and ridicule when I was younger. Did I deserve that? I don't think so. Was it from God? No, he didn't bully me. But a number of years ago, I realized that what I was doing was I was taking that negativity on myself, and I was believing the lie that was actually spoken over me. And through a lot of prayer from people in this church, from groups like Encounter Freedom, from friends and family, and through forgiving directly either the people who bullied me or myself for believing the bullying lies, I've started to have healing from that. You see, it's not about how we cope with this, but where God is in all of this. That's what it's telling us in Matthew. Go back to Matthew and you'll see God is in the middle of all this. I was also told that part of this had come from unconfessed sin. Now, that could be true. That could be absolutely true. Or it's a spiritual attack. It could be absolutely true. But there's some things like, I can't tell you, I even made up sins that just to go, right, okay, right, maybe I've done that, I've had that bad thought just to see if it would make things better. I thought that my mental health issues was because God was punishing me. That is not true. I had yet to see at that point that God's love outshone everything that had happened. I thought that if I read my Bible every day, prayed like a monk, sang the hymns that were not modern ones, it had to be old ones, I would then be a super Christian and everything would be okay. It didn't last long. The only thing it did was to feed my knowledge that I wasn't good enough. And that is wrong. Maybe that's sinful. So the next myth. The next one, sorry. You are something less than. This is one of these things that, even if you have an illness, a physical illness, you can feel this way, that you're less than other people. This is not what God thinks. During the time that I was ill, when I was 17, I heard people saying to my parents, when you think you're having conversations and the other person can actually hear you. Yeah. This was conversations that I heard, so they were talking about me. That didn't help. But I got things like, oh, but he's a good lad. But he's a good lad. He will get better. And I'm not getting better. And we're praying for God's will to be done. Well, I'd really like to know what that is. Because at that point, I was angry. Like, why was this happening? And these were people who loved me. These were people who had my best interests at heart. But I felt that I was different. There was something different about me. It didn't help my mood. We need to be careful when we're dealing with mental health issues. And it's hard. We will say the wrong things, but we can say the right things as well. Our words and actions can have both a detrimental effect and a positive effect. My mum, it's Mother's Day, so I'm going to talk about her. My mum, she had depression the year before. She had depression. She talked about that she had depression throughout her life. She was sort of my mainstay throughout this time. And she, So she sat on my bed one day, because I was told I had to rest, right? So that was, you sit in your bed all day. That wasn't good. But she sat on my bed all day, and I said to her, why has God given this to me? And her words were, I don't believe that God's given this to you. But what I do know is that God will use this. And I believe that you will help people with this. The other people that were around me that helped were my friends as well. They were just amazing. They didn't treat me any differently, but they always had a watchful eye. My little brother was amazing at the time. The poor guy had witnessed both panic attacks. The second one, we were on our own, and he had to deal with me. So he did really well. And it's true. Like, what my mum said was true. She was prophetic, and she would never have said that she was prophetic. And today, I deal with young people who have anxiety and stress and fear and worry, OCD, gender dysphoria, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, trauma, and I could keep going on. If I went back to that 17-year-old boy and said, you're going to be dealing with this and speaking to people about this, if you go, no, you are nuts. But not only do I help in these situations, there are other things that I do that actually help. So this overthinking that I have has actually become quite a gift in some ways. Because my problem solving, when I look at things, I try and think of every scenario and it helps in my problem solving. But it's there, and it can have a negative and a positive effect. It doesn't make me less than. Not at all. A few weeks ago, if you go to the next slide, Ruth and I went to London, and we went to the Van Gogh experience. And I love this painting. I think it's just, there's something about it that, I'm not an art critic, sorry, Chris, but I feel like I could go into this painting. There's something about it that draws me in, and it's beautiful. This painting was one of the last paintings that Van Gogh did. He painted this in a mental institution. He painted this in a severe bout of depression, right? It didn't make him less than. The people round about him treated him awfully. But this is things that he produced. Never, ever, ever let anybody tell you that you're something less than because of the things that are going on in your life, your mental health. It is not true. You can do amazing things. I have seen young people with anxiety who've gone on to be drama students. Drama students, they're standing up in front of people and performing. I've seen people give speeches that could never have stood up in their early years of school and stood up and spoken to people, more people than there are here. They do amazing things. The other thing that we maybe worry about in the next slide is, I can't help. That is not true. You heard what Josh said. Parents had come along and they go, how can I do that? I don't want to make things worse. Absolutely. But you can help. In the New Testament, we are encouraged to love and care for one another, to comfort and build up one another, to bear each other's burdens. So you can help. As I said, my mantra, I'm not a mental health practitioner, but I can listen. And I can take time out of my day to spend with someone who's suffering. I can go for a coffee with someone. I can go for a walk. I can maybe spend a day with someone. I might have to organize games nights or some things as well. And the biggest thing we can do is pray. We can pray for one another, especially when we don't know what the best thing is to do. I couldn't have got through those early days without my mum, my little brother, and my close friends in the church. For those that are struggling with their mental or physical health, we can take it to God. Now, I'm going to put some verses up. Now, these were a trigger for me, so the next verses are for Philippians. By the time I was 17, I had learned these verses off by heart because my youth leader had done this horrible thing, whereas if you didn't learn the verses, you had to speak on them the following week. That's not good. So I was good at learning my verses. So it says here, do not be anxious about everything. These were quoted to me. And I wanted to go, I know this. Don't tell me anymore. But in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. These are amazing words. Let them sift into you. Right? But these were ones that would go, please stop telling me about this. But they are true. It's not saying don't worry about anything. It's just saying pray about it. And the peace of God will remove the worry, and it will be upon us. It is important that we speak these things out. It's important that we have people that we can speak to as well, people that we can trust with these things. There's some people, and I'm going to mention a couple of people today, there's some people who I actually haven't given them permission, but they've taken permission. And it's good. It's good permission. One of the people is Tim. Tim, I don't know, God must actually just go and ask your question. And the question is usually, how was things in school? And it's just like he comes at the right time. And he asks that question, going, how do you know? It's really difficult. And I'm able to say to him, this is what it's like. And he just listens. Doesn't need to give any solutions. He just listens. Thank you, Tim, for that. Another one is Carol Key. I didn't ask her permission to say this. But Carol, when I say things that we'll be sharing in Connect Group, and I'll say things about school, and Carol will say things like, you are God's person in that situation. Like, you are the right person. God has placed you in that situation just for these people. Do you know why God has put you in? And you think, oh my word. And she probably says lots of things like that. But it's encouraging. Like, we can encourage one another. We can be there for one another. And when you do that, it's like a prayer, and the peace of God that transcends all understanding just comes and fills me. I'm going to recommend a couple of books to you. I was going to read out of it, but time has gone. These are both by Patrick Regan. Honesty Over Silence. This is his story. It is such an easy, difficult read. Right? It's a lovely book to read and to hear his story. He doesn't hold back, but he gives hope in there. And he says, let's speak about these things. Let's stop being silent about it, because if we're silent, nothing gets done. And it's okay to not be okay. And this book that he's written called Brighter Days. Now, I'm nearly finished this book, and it talks about 12 different types of mental health concerns. And you read them, and it's like you read some books and they're really patronizing. You read this and you go, oh, that's really clear. I quite get that. It is not a difficult read. It's a nice read, and it gives some tips and techniques as well. His charity, Kintsugi Hope, I think they're on tour at the moment in Edinburgh and Glasgow. I think they're coming out. Go along if you can, not on Wednesday because it's AGM. It's finished now. Sorry, you're too late. But you can find things online about it. Their hope is that they get this in like doctor surgeries and school staff rooms, in libraries that are just sitting out so that you can flick through it and you go, well, I've got someone or myself is like self-harming. Well, there's a wee section on self-harming that you can read. There's a wee section on worry. There's a wee section on anxiety. This is something, it's not that you need to read the whole book. This is something really good that we can put out there. It's maybe something that we could put in, our new home. You can do that. My prayer for you today is that you will know that God walks with you through the good times and the really dark times. That what he has is the best for you. That your mental health does not define you. God does. That he will give you the strength to deal with life's ups and downs. And that you will know that he has good and great plans for you. And that you will receive this gift of peace. As I said, that boy 40 years ago would never have thought he'd be speaking to you, standing up speaking to you about this. He was hiding it. He didn't want to talk about it. But once he started talking about it, it helped. It didn't cure it, it helped. And yes, there are cures. We believe in healing from God. God can heal our mental health and our physical health. But if he doesn't, there's a purpose and plan that he has for you as well. My prayer is that God will bless you wherever you are.